Then deep roots. Okay, that is before Europeans knew about America. And that's an interesting chapter of history, very interesting to study. When the Europeans discovered the Americas, then they began to bring black Africans over. The black African slave trade, the black gold of West Africa, was taken out of West Africa 50 years before the Americas were discovered. But then when the Americas were discovered, hundreds of hundreds of thousands of black Africans were brought to the Americas as slaves. All of you know that. They were the black gold. They were the labor element that was absolutely essential. The slave system, the plantation system, where did that come from? Yes. Somebody says something. Okay. Where in Europe?
Came, I think, from England?
No. Go further south. Okay, you're getting close.
Portugal.
You're getting close. Go further east.
France?
This plantation slavery system comes out of the Crusades. And it comes out of the sugar plantations that the Crusaders created in Crete and Cyprus and different lands that they owned, and they used Arab slaves. Then, as the Ottoman Turks and the Mamluks began to take over in the Eastern Mediterranean, they skipped until they come to Spain and Portugal. And then, when the Americas are discovered, plantation slavery comes to the United States fully developed. Plantation slavery did not develop here. It developed over there, and it's part of the synthetic history between the Muslim world and the non-Muslim world. Now, these are American Muslims. Who is this man? Yeah? Who is this man right here? He's a Hafiz. See, now, you have to know this. You should know him better than George Washington. This man was here, when this picture was taken, George Washington was a little tiny baby. He was brought to the United States the year that George Washington was born. This is Job ben Solomon, Ayub ibn Sulaiman. The first chapter of African American literature is the memoirs of Job ben Solomon that were written by Blewett. That's the first chapter of African American literature. That's really important. And this was a great man. He was highly educated. He was a Hafiz. He was a man of great character and nobility. Who is this? Right. You know your history. This is Yaro. It's a Hausa word. Yaro Mahmud. Yaro Mahmud, he was called. He lived to be over 113 years old. And this picture was painted by Pierce. Pierce, who is the same painter who painted George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, he also painted this man. And that's because of the fact that he loved this man. And most of the people who knew him loved him. And they say that he says he's a Mohammedan. And we hear him in the streets singing the praises of God. And he's a good man. And everybody likes him. He lived around Washington, D.C. He lived in Maryland, and he earned his freedom. He was a free man when this was taken, and he was a wealthy man. He went into real estate, and he made a lot of money. Who is this right here? Okay, I'm not going to ask you because you know. All right, who is it? Right, Ibrahim Abdurrahman, the prince. This is the prince, and there's now a beautiful book about him too, which is very tragic as well, because his story is a very sad story. He was a prince, and his master in Natchez, Mississippi, called him prince. He didn't know that he was a prince. He couldn't speak English, but because he behaved like a prince, he was noble, then he called him prince. And he was indeed a prince, a West African prince. Ibrahim ibn Abdurrahman, he married a black woman named Isabella. They had probably 12 or 13 children. And he earned his freedom. Then he earned Isabella's freedom. And then he wouldn't go back to Africa until he could get all of his children back. But he couldn't do that. That's the sad story, because the abolitionists get involved in it. The anti-abolitionists get involved in it. It becomes a political football, and nobody really cares about him. He goes back to West Africa with Isabella and about half of his children. The other half of his children remain here. And these are their descendants today. Okay, so this is really important. And again, no Muslim community in the Western Hemisphere, or in Australia, or in Brazil, has this kind of a legacy. And this legacy is more precious than gold. This legacy is now being brought out. There are very good books by Sylviane Diouf and Alan Austin and others, but this is gold. This is treasure. These are real roots.